So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the GCSE Maths Higher Practice paper of Set 3, Paper 2, which is a calculator paper. Now a little reminder before we get started is that a link to the paper can be found and downloaded by clicking on the link in the description, and we'll also include a question breakdown so you can see what topic refers to each of the questions. So let's get straight into question 1. So question 1 reads, the equation of a line is y equals 2x minus 1. Circle the point that is the intercept of the y-axis. Now again, if you recognise that this is y equals mx plus c, the y-intercept is always the constant at the end. So here we've got minus 1, which means the correct answer is going to be 0 minus 1. Alternatively, what you want to do when you want to find the y-intercept is basically substitute x equals 0 into the expression. And when we substitute that in, it's going to give us minus 1. So the coordinate then is 0 minus 1. Moving on to question 2, it says simplify a to the power 4 multiplied by a to the power 6, all divided by a to the power 3. Well, if we simplify the numerator, we get a to the power of 10. And that's been divided by a to the power of 3. And the rule of indices when we're dividing is we take away the powers. So that's going to be a to the power of 10 minus 3, which is a to the power of 7. Moving on to question 3, it says a coin is thrown 50 times. The coin lands heads 30 times. Circle the relative frequency of landing on a head. Well, the relative frequency is the number of times it occurs, which is 30, divided by the total number of trials, which is 50. And then if we simplify this fraction, we get 3/5. So we want to circle our fourth option. Moving on to question 4, it says the number x is 15.8 when rounded to 3 significant figures. Circle the error interval. Well, if it's been rounded to the nearest significant figure, well, our third sig fig is the 8, which represents tenths. So we want to round this number up to nearest 10. So the one that's going to be the error interval is going to be the top right-hand option. Moving on to 5a, it says expand and simplify. So here we just want to expand the bracket. So here we've got x squared minus 4x, and then we've got 5x plus 5x minus 20. And if we simplify that, we get x squared plus x minus 20. Now if you did go straight into the final answer, because you can do it in your head, then that would be worth the 2 marks if it is correct. Moving on to 5b, it says solve, and we've got a double bracket equal to 0. So the first you want to make sure it is equal to 0. And then all you want to then do is just make each bracket equal to 0, in which we get the answers of 8 and minus 7. Moving on to question 6, it says Dev invests £1,500 for 2 years. The compound interest rate is 1.6% per year, which calculation works out the total value after 2 years. So for this, remember that the formula for compound interest is the original amount, or the starting amount, multiplied by the decimal multiplier after the increase or decrease, and that's to the power of the time. So here we've got 100% plus 1.6%, which is 101.6. We convert that into a decimal by moving the decimal point 2 places. So that's going to be 1.016 to the power of 2. So the one we want to circle is our fourth option. Moving on to 8b, it says Emma invests £1,500 for 2 years. The interest rate is 1.8% for the first year and 1.3% for the second year. Whose investment is worth more after the 2 years? Well, if we work out Dev's, which was from part A, so that's 1,500 multiplied by 1.16016 to the power of 2. And if I type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 1548.384. Obviously the 4 is not really applicable because we can't have a thousandth of a penny. So then from here we can then work out what Emma's is, in which all I'm going to do is type in 1,500 multiplied by the first year, multiplied by the second year, and then work out the answer. And that comes up to a total of 1546.851. And again, although this is not the final answer, the third number doesn't really make a difference, but we just want to see whose is bigger, who gets the most amount, and so the answer then is dev. Moving on to question 7, it says the volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. A steel sphere has a radius of 9 centimeters as shown. Work out the volume of the sphere. So here we're going to do 4/3 times pi times 9 cubed. And again, if I type that straight into my calculator, again, try and use the fraction butter where possible, in which we get an answer of 3053.628059. That's just taking what it says on my calculator. It also gives me exact value, which is 972 pi. So again, any of those answers, rounded or not, you can write. If you have rounded it, it's always good practice to state what you've rounded it to. So for example, if I was going to write 3053.6, I would state that I've rounded up to 1 decimal place. As the question doesn't specify what they want to round it to, it's entirely up to you. But if you do get your rounding wrong, you may lose a mark. So if you want to play it safe, just write down the exact value, either in terms of pi or whatever your calculator tells you. Moving on to 7b, it says the density of steel is 7.8 grams per centimetre cubed. Work out the mass of the sphere. Well, the formula for density is mass over volume. So rearranging this, mass is equal to density times volume. Now again, you just want to make sure that the units for the volume are the same units as what's given the density. So here we've got centimetre cubed. So the mass is therefore going to be 7.8, multiplied your answer in A. And again, if you rounded it up, you might get a different answer to what I've got, but I'm not going to round it up. I'm just going to do 7.8 multiplied by 972 pi, because it's the easier way to get the exact value, in which I get an answer of 23,818,29886. And again, if you want to round that up, it's entirely up to you, because there's nothing that specifies how they want the round number rounded up to. I'm just going to state that that's been rounded to 1 decimal place. Moving on to question 8, it says the area of a rectangle is 68 square centimetres. Work out the size of angle X. Well, for this, the first thing we need to do is we can see we've got a right angle triangle and we're trying to work out an angle, so we're going to be using trig. Now, in order to use trig, I need to work out what the height of the rectangle is. So to find the height, we've got the area is equal to base times height. We know that the area is 68. We know that the base is 16. So h is going to be 68 divided by 16, which gives me an answer of 4.25. So then to work out, if I just draw the triangle out again, I've got the base, which is 16, the height, which is 4.25, so I'm going to be using tan. So I've got tan x equals the opposite divided by the adjacent, and then to work out x, I'm just going to do the inverse of that. And again, type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 14.875, blah, blah, blah. And again, if you want to round it up, that's absolutely fine, but just make sure that if you have rounded it up, you have stated what you've rounded up to. Alternatively, just copy the answer that's on your calculator. Question 9, it says which number is not in standard form? Circle your answer. Well, the one you want to circle is the second option. The reason for that is because the number that you multiply by the power of 10 needs to be a number between 1 and 10, exclusive of 10. So again, the only one that's not going to be is 0.99. So the correct answer to circle is the second option. Moving on to question 10, it says that a charity collection was made. Information about the amounts given by men is shown in the table. The mean amount given by women is £6.30 per person. Compare the mean amounts given by men and women. So for this, what we need to do is first of all find the average for the men. So we're first going to complete the table. So the midpoint here is going to be 2.5, 7.5 and 12.5. And again, if you're not sure about how to work out the midpoint, just do the upper bound, add the lower bound and divide by 2. So then from this, all that's left for me to then do is to find the fx value, in which I multiply the midpoint by the frequency, in which I should get 27.5, I should get 52.5 and 25. giving me a grand total for the fx column of 105. Now for the mean for the men is going to be the total fx, which is 105, divided by the total frequency, which is 20, and that comes up to £5.25. So all that's left for me to then do is make a comparison between the women, which is £6.30, and the men, which is £5.25. So my concluding statement is going to be that women gave more money. And there we go. And the reason for that is because £6.30 is greater than £5.25. Moving on to question 11, and let me just zoom up because we've got a lot of information here. It says the angles in triangle A are in the ratio of 1 to 2 to 3. The angles in triangle B are in the ratio of 4 to 5 to 6. Jack says that the middle number in each ratio is 1/3 of the total, so one of the angles in each triangle is 60 degrees. Is he correct? So let's have a look. So from this, if we look at triangle A, well, triangle A has a total of 6 parts, and the total sum of angles is 180, so that means that one part is going to be 30. So therefore, the angles in the triangle in the ratio of 1 to 2 to 3 is going to be 30, 60, and 90. Then if I then do the same for triangle B, so here we've got a total of 15 parts, which add up to 180. So one part is therefore going to equal 12 degrees. So then substituting that in the ratio of 5 to 6, or is it 4 to 5 to 6? Yep. It's going to be 4 times 12, which is 48, 5 times 12, which is 60, and 6 times 12, which is 72. And as you can see, that one of the angles is 60 degrees. So is Jack correct? Yes. Oh. He is correct. Moving on to question 12, it says, in a class the ratio of boys to girls is x to y. Circle the fraction of the class that are girls. So here we've got boys, which is x, girls, which are y, and the total, which is x plus y. Now to work out the fraction of the class which are girls, is going to be the girls over the total. So it's going to be y over x plus y, which is our fourth option. Moving on to question 13, it says the price of a computer is reduced by 17.5%. The reduced price is 264. By how much is the price reduced? So for this, what we need to do is do reverse percentages. So here we've got the sale price. We want the decimal multiplier. So we've got 100 take away 17.5, which is 82.5. Convert that into a decimal multiplier. So we want to divide because we're going in the opposite direction. And typing that into my calculator, I get the original price of the computer, which is 320. Now the question is asking me for how much has the price been reduced. So we do the original price minus the sale price, which comes up to a total of £56. Moving on to question 14, it says that the sum of all the numbers in this Venn diagram are between 0 and 1 to 3 decimal places. A is a number between 0.7 to 1 decimal place, and B is a number that's rounded 0.75 to 2 decimal places. Work out possible number to 3 decimal places of the shaded area. So for this, what we need to recognise is just make sure that we're reading the information. So all the numbers in the Venn diagram have to be between 0 and 1. A is a number that's 0.7 to 1 decimal place. So if I do the boundary for this to 1 decimal place, is going to be 0.65, and if I just write n, and 0.75. And again, just making sure the inequalities are correct. So that's the error bound for this. For B, that's been rounded to 2 decimal places to the nearest hundredth. So that's going to be 0.745 to 0.755. So these are the numbers that we can use. Now the numbers that are in between, now again we're looking for 3 decimal places, so what I need to do for this is just make sure that all the numbers in my bounds are to 3 decimal places. So there we go. Now for this area that's shaded in both, now the bit that's looking at the numbers in green and the numbers in pink, we want to know what numbers will be overlapped. Well, the numbers that will be overlapped will be between 0.745, which is the lower limit of B, and the upper limit of A. So that's going to be between 0.749. Now it's important that we use, all you want to do is just write down any number to 3 decimal places that are between these 2 numbers here. So as an example, I'm going to go for 0.746. And again, we're just writing down one possible number, but this is the boundary that we're working with for part A. For part B, it says work out possible number to 3 decimal places of the area that's just A. Well, just A is going to be the boundary between, again, any number between these values is going to be between 0.650 to 0.744. So again, any number between this bracket, so I'm going to go for 0.670. And again, anything between those 2 numbers will be absolutely fine. Then moving on to 14C, it says work out possible number to 3 decimal places that is just in B. So the numbers that are just in B, the boundaries that you could have are any number between 0.750 and 0.754. So again, any number to 3 decimal places between those. So I'm going to go for 0.751, let's say, as an example. It then says work out the possible number to 3 decimal places of the shaded area outside. So again, you could have any number that is between 0 to 0.6. 0.649, or you could have any number between 0.755 to 0.999. So any of those numbers between either of those 2 brackets. So for example, I'm just going to go for 0.500, and again make sure that your number is to 3 decimal places. Moving on to question 15, it says PQRS is a trapezium with PQ parallel to SR. P and Q are on the x-axis and the y-coordinate of S is 8. We know that PQ is greater than SR. The area of PQRS is 48 square units. Work out one possible set of points for PQRS. So for this, what we want to do is, we know that the area of the trapezium is 48. So what I want to do is I need to work out what the formula is going to be. So we know that the area of a trapezium is A plus B times H divided by 2, and that equals the area. So substitute the numbers in here. I know I've got A plus B times 8 divided by 2 equals 48. So from this, what I've then got is A plus B multiplied by 8 equals 96, and A plus B, take the 8 over by dividing, equals 12. Now A is this distance here, and B is this distance here. Now from this, what we then need to do is, for example, we just need to pick some parameters. Now for this, we know that A plus B has got to equal 12. Now from this, we know that the x ordinates, now in fact from this I can work out what the y ordinates are going to be. So here at P and at Q, the y ordinate is 0. So P and Q, y ordinate is 0. And for RS, the y ordinate is at 8. So they are definitely going to be fixed. So the next thing that's left for me to, let me just zoom out so we can see it a little bit clearer on the screen. Just about there, I think we can just about see it. Now from this, there's a few parameters with regards to the x ordinates. Now we know that P has got to be smaller than S. S has got to be smaller than R. And R has got to be smaller than Q. Now, if we know that PQ is basically our value of B and RS is our value of A, and we know that A plus B equals 12, so what we need to do is basically pick two positive numbers that add up to equal 12. So if I go for, let's say we go for 2 and 10, let's say. So here what we want to do, if I just substitute that 10 and that being 2. So if I just pick a random number for P, let's say we've got to be greater than 0, so let's go for 1. So if P is at 1, then that means Q is going to be 10 squares across, so that means Q is going to be 11. Then for for S, that's got to equal, or A's got to equal 2. So if I know that S has got to be bigger than P, so if I just say that S is, let's say, at 3, then the difference between S and R has got to be 2. So 2 plus 3 is 5. So then I could write 3 and 5. And so that there is just one example of the correct coordinates I could have for P, Q, or S. Moving on to question 16. Of course, it's going to reset. Now, moving on to question 16, it says, I'm thinking of two different numbers. They are both greater than 10, and the highest common factor is half the smaller number. Work out the possible pair of numbers. Now, this one's only worth 1 mark, so either you've got to basically pick two numbers that are greater than 10, where the smaller number is the highest common factor between the two. So again, you can either do this by guessing and just playing it so here I could have an answer of 12 and 18. So here the highest common factor between 12 and 18 is going to be 6, and that is half of the smaller number. So an example we could have is 18 and 12. Now again, to make sure the two numbers you've picked is correct, so if I just write HCF equals 6, so that's one particular example. So here what we're looking for is if the first number and the second number, well, if I say that the first number is 2x, where x has got to be greater than 5. So if you just pick a number that's greater than 5, because we know it's got to be, the numbers have got to be greater than 10, then 2x, the second number then needs to be kx, where k is greater than 2. So these are the parameters that you can have. So for example, if you pick a number that's greater than 5, so let's go for, I don't know, let's go for greater than 5, so let's go for 10, let's say. So pick x equals 10. Well, the first number is going to be 2x, which is 20. And if we pick a number for k, so let's go for k equals 3. Well, if x is 10, k is 3, then that's going to be 30. So as you can see, I've got two numbers of 20 and 30. The highest common factor between 20 and 30 is going to be 10, which is half the size of our smaller number. So again, that's how you can work it out. But again, if you've just picked two numbers, just make sure that those two rules are correct to get the single mark. Moving on to 16b, it says that a, b and c are prime numbers, and it says that n equals a cubed plus b squared times c. Is n always odd? Tick a box. Now for this, what you want to do is either give an example, so just try random prime numbers, substitute it in and see if the answer is going to be odd. You have got your calculator, so here if I've substituted, let's say a equals 3, b equals 5 and c equals, let's say 7. So here I've got 3 cubed times 5 squared times 7, and I type that into my calculator. I get an answer of 4725, which is odd. But then if I try a equals 2, b equals 3 and c equals 5, I'm going to end up with 2 cubed times 3 squared times 7. So that's going to be 8 times 9 times 7, which equals 504, which is even. So is the answer always odd? The answer we need to tick is no. And make sure you do give an example to get that extra, or to get the full marks. Moving on to question 17, it says here are two closed containers. 4 tennis balls just fit in each container. Each tennis ball has a diameter of 64 millimeters. Which container has the smaller surface area? And you must show you're working out. So for the cuboid, the surface area is basically the area of each of the faces. So here, looking at the lengths, this is going to be 64. This is going to be 2 tennis balls, which is 128, and that's going to be 128. So here, the surface area is going to be 4 lots of this face here. So that's going to be 4 lots of 64 times 128 plus 2 lots of this top face, which is 128 times 128. So if I type that all into my calculator, I get a cuboid surface area of 65536, and that's millimeter squared. Then if I do the cuboid, the surface area of a cylinder, well, the radius is going to be 32 and the length is 4 lots of 64, which is 256. Now the surface area for a cylinder is the area of the circle times 2 plus the area of the rectangle, the side bit, which is going to be 2 pi r times h. So substituting those numbers in, I get pi times the radius squared, which is 32 squared, times 2 plus, and this is going to be 2 times pi times the radius, which is 32, times the width or the length or the height, whichever you want to talk about, is 256. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 57905.83579, or the exact value is 18432 pi. And the question is asking which one has got a smaller surface area. So here we can say that the cylinder has the smaller surface area. And there we go. Now moving on to question 18, it says here is some information about the times in minutes 8 teachers took to get to work. And question 18a is asking us on the grid to draw a cumulative frequency graph. So the first thing I need to do is work out my cumulative frequency values. So here is just a running total, so that's going to be 12. 12 plus 32 is 44. Then we've got 25 plus 44, which is 69, and 11 plus 69, which is 80. So then all I then need to do is plot those values against the upper values. So starting at 0, we're plotting 20, 12, 40, 44, 60, 69, and 90 at 80. So from this, starting at 0, first one is 2012, which is there. Next one, 40, 44, which is there. 60 at 69, which is about there. And at 90, it's at 80. So all that's left for me to then do is to join those points up either with straight lines or with a curve. And again, it's entirely up to you which one you want to do. So again, let me just try and accurately join these points up. Now I definitely would recommend either using a ruler as a guide or adding it up. So you can either look like something looks like that but with straighter lines, or you can attempt to do it with a curve, in which I would probably suggest any of those. So it should look something looks like this. Then for B, what it's asking for is estimate the number of teachers who took 50 to 70 minutes to travel to work. So for this, for B, what you need to do is to first of all work out less than 70. So you're drawing a horizontal line at 70 until it hits your curve, and you're reading whatever value that is. So I make it out to be whatever number this is. So if I just label that as A, Then you want to do the same for less than 50. So you're drawing a horizontal line at 50, and again making sure you are marking this on your graph. And whatever number, so if I just call that B, and then the answer for part B is your value of A minus your value of B. So if I look at my graph, I would say A is roughly, I would say about 62. B, if I just get rid of that pink line, because that is drawn quite poorly. So I would say where it's at 70 is probably at 45. So then the answer then is 62 minus 45, which if I type it to my calculator, I get an answer of 17. But I would say any answer roughly around 15 to 17, but as long as you've marked it on your graph where you've got those numbers from, and the numbers of A and B are correct from your graph, you take away the two answers and you should get the 2 marks. So let's just zoom in on the next question. So next question 19.8 says ABCD is a rectangle. The x-axis is a line of symmetry. These inequalities describe the shaded region, and it says write down the values of P, Q, R, S. Well, for this, looking at we know that A and B are the coordinates stated on the screen, so we know that this point here is -2 and this point here is at 6. So looking at the coordinates of D, well, that's going to be -2, and for C it's going to be 6. So the next thing for me to then do is work out the y ordinates. Well, if this distance here is 3 and the x-axis line of symmetry, then this will also be 3, and from 0 to 3, so that means that this point here is going to be -3. So the y ordinate for D and C is going to be -3. So then looking at x, the difference between the x ordinates is -2 to 6, so that's going to be -2 and 6, and the difference between the y ordinates is 3 and -3, so R is going to be -3 and S is going to be +3. Moving on to question 19b, it says the grid shows the graph of y equals x plus 2, and the question is asking us to, on the grid, identify the region. Let's go back to the question. There we go. It says on the grid, identify the region represented where y is less than x minus x plus 2, y is greater than 3 minus x, and x is less than or equal to 3. So this line here is already drawn for me. That's done in black. So the next line for me then to do is plot this line. So what I need to do is y equals 3 minus x. So if I draw a table of values, pick 3 smallish numbers, so let's go for 0, 1, 2, substitute it in, so 3 take away 0 is 3, 3 take away 1 is 2, 3 take away 2 is 1, so at 0, 3, at 1 it's 2, and at 2 it's 1. And then what I then want to do is draw a dotted line or a dashed line between those points there, and again you should be using a ruler, and it should look something like that. And then all that's left for me to then do is plot x equals 3, which is a vertical line through 3, and it's a solid line, and that's x equals 3. This line here is y equals 3 minus x, and the region that we want to shade then is this region here. Which we've labelled as R. Then moving on to question 20, it says f of x is 3 to the power of 2x and g of x is x cubed for all values of x. Work out the value f1 plus g4. Well, f1 is where we're substituting 1 into f of x, so that's going to be 3 to the power of 2 times 1, which is 3 squared, which is 9. G of 4, so we're substituting x equals 4 into it, so that's going to be 4 cubed, which is 64. So 64 plus 9 gives me an answer of 73. Then it says work out the value of the inverse of g and minus 27. So the inverse function of g is the inverse of x cubed, which is the cube root of x. So then the inverse of g of minus 27 is going to equal the cube root of minus 27, which I can stick into my calculator, gives me an answer of minus 3. It then says for 20c, work out the expression for g f of x. So this is where we're substituting f of x into g, in which we get the expression of 3 to the power of 2x, which is my f of x, and then we cube that. Now the rules of indices where we've got brackets is we multiply the powers, so that's going to be 3 to the power of 6x. And there we go. Moving on to question 20d, it says one of these graphs is a sketch of y equals 3 to the power of 2x. Which one is it? And the correct one we want to circle is C. Now if you're not sure about how to do this, all you then need to do is just pick some random numbers for x and y. Try and pick some negative numbers in there as well. So 5, minus 1, 0, 1 and 2. Some generally nice small numbers. Substitute those numbers in. So 3 to the power of 4 is 81. 3 to the power of 2 is 9. 3 to the power of 0 is 1. And 3 to the power of minus 2 is 1 over 9. So here I'm looking for any of those graphs in which the only one it can be is going to be C. Moving on to question 21. So let me just zoom out so we can see it on the screen. So it says the graph shows the speed of a skier. Nick wants to estimate the distance travelled by the skier in 140 seconds. And the question says he works out the area of the triangle with the vertices of 0, 0, 140, 0 and 90, 9.8. Does Nick's method give a good estimate? Well, if we plot those points, so 0, 0, 90 and 9.8 and 140, 0, then if I connect those points up, like so. And is that a good estimate? I would say yes it is, and the reason for that is because the area outside the triangle is approximately the area under the triangle. So in other words, what we're saying is that this area here and let's say this area here is roughly, I would say approximately the same as those areas there. It might be an underestimate, but it's never going to be accurate, but I would say yeah, Nick's probably okay to use that method. It then says for 21b, it says use Nick's method to work out the estimate of the distance. So for this all we need to do is work out the area of the triangle. So the base, which is 140, times the height, which was 9.8, divided by 2, and that's going to give me an answer. And let's just stick that into my calculator. 148 times 9.8 divided by 2 gives me an answer of 686. Then says Helen uses a different method. She starts by estimating how many of the smaller squares are in the region between the graph and the horizontal axis. She estimates her estimate is 1550 squares. Complete Helen's method to estimate the distance. So what we need to do first here is work out what one of those little squares are going to be. Now one little square is, well, the base of that is going to be 2 and the height is going to be 0.2. So one little square, so the area of one square is going to be 2 times 0.2, which is 0.4, We then need to multiply that, so the total area is 0.4 multiplied by 1550, and that comes up to a total of 620. And so the answer then is 620. Moving on to question 22, it says the value of a car in V pounds after t years is modelled by the following equation. And we've got V equals A times K to the power of minus T, where A and K are constants. The value of the car when new is 22,000. The value of the car after 2 years is £14,080. And the question is asking us to work out the value of A and K. So in terms of this, now A is the original price. In other words, when t equals 0, which tells us what is told in this. So here we can then say that A equals 22,000. So then if we look at the second bit of information here, so this bit here, using compound interest, we've got 22000 multiplied by K, which is what we don't know. T is 2, so it's minus 2, and that equals 14080. So what we now need to do is do a bit of rearranging to work out the value of K. So K to the power of minus 2 is 14080 divided by 22000. Now 2 to the power of minus 2 is equal to 1 over K squared, and that equals 14080 over 22000. So then from this I can do a bit of cross multiplying. So 14080 K squared equals 22000 times 1. So therefore K squared is going to be 14080 divided by 22000. So therefore K equals the square root of 14080 over 22000. Type that straight into my calculator and I get a K value of 1.25. So here K equals 1.25 and A equals 22,000 or 2200. 22,000 rather. Moving on to question 23, it says AFE is a straight line. A to F to F to E is in the ratio of 3 to 2. DE is parallel to CF. DE is equal to 2 lots of CF, and EF is A, AB is 2B, and CB is 3C. And the question is asking us to work out what D to E is. So for this, we want to work out what this length here is. So first things first, let's look at what we know. So here to go from F to E, so looking at the first bit of information is that if I know that 2 parts equals A, then 1 part is going to equal half of A. So let's go for, I don't know why I've put 1 there, so just get rid of that. So 1 part is going to be 0.5A. So 3 parts, which is, if I just write down, that's F to E. And this is therefore going to be A to F, which is 3 parts, is going to be 0.5A times 3, which equals 1.5A. So here A to F is 1.5A. Oh, going in the other direction rather. And that should be F to A. So from this, what we can then do is then work out what C to F is going to be. Now C to F is going to be C to B plus B to A plus A to F. So C to F is going to be 3C minus 2B minus, and there should be a 1 there, so I'm just, I don't know why that's missed off, minus 1.5A. Now reading the second bit of information, we can then work out that DE is equal to 2 lots of CF. So if we multiply all of this by 2, we'll get our final answer. So therefore, and let me just write this bit again, 2 lots of CF. So it's going to be 2 lots of 3C minus 2B minus 1.5a, and that's going to be 6c minus 4b minus 3a, and there is my final answer for that one. Then moving on to question 24a, it says here is a graph of y equals f of x, and it says the graph has a turning point of minus 1, 4, and it says on the grid draw a graph of y equals f of x minus 2. Now basically what this therefore means is this graph transformation means it's been shifted 2 places to the right. So here if I identify the 5 main points, and what I want to do is I want to shift each of those points 2 places to the right. And so what that then becomes is those orange points there. So all that's left for me to then do is join those points up, in which I should get something that looks like that. Then moving on to 24b, which is our last question, it says the graph of y equals minus 3x squared plus 4x minus 5 is reflected on the y-axis. Work out the equation of the reflected graph, give your answer in its simplest form. Well, if it's been reflected on the y-axis, what you need to do is change the sign of x. So here if I just highlight where my x's are, I just want to rewrite the equation, so making sure you're writing y equals. So I've got minus 3, here I'm going to have minus x squared plus 4 lots of minus x, take away 5. Then all that's left for me to then do is simplify this. Well, minus x squared is going to give you positive x, so that's going to be minus 3x squared. 4 times minus x is minus 4x, minus 5. So my final answer is minus 3x squared minus 4x minus 5.